Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, retold by Jennifer Bassett in the Oxford Bookworms series, Part 1 of 3. Chapter 1. Jean Valjean. It is the year 1796, and the people of France are hungry. Not the rich people, of course. They have food, they have warm clothes, they have beautiful houses. No, it is the poor people of France. Jean Valjean is one of these poor people. He is a young man, big, strong, and a good worker, but he has no work. He cannot find work, and he is hungry. He lives with his sister in the village of Brie. Her husband is dead, and she has 7 children. It is a cold, hard winter, and there is no food in the house, no bread, nothing, and 7 children. Jean Valjean is a good man. He is not a thief. But how can a man just sit there when his sister's children cry all night because they are hungry? What can a man do? He leaves his house at night and goes down the village street. He puts his hand through the window of the bakery. Crash! He takes a loaf of bread and he runs. He runs fast, but other people run faster. France is not kind to poor people. France sends Jean Valjean to prison for 5 years. After 4 years, he escapes. They find him and bring him back. They give him 6 more years. Once again he escapes, and 2 days later they find him, and they give him another 8 years. 19 years in prison for a loaf of bread. In 1815, when he leaves prison, Jean Valjean is a different man. Prison changes people. Years of misery, years of back-breaking work, years of cruel prison guards, these things change a man. Once there was love in Jean Valjean's heart. Now there is only hate. One evening in October, in the year 1815, there was a knock on the door of the Bishop of Dines's house. "Come in," said the bishop. The bishop was a kind man. Everyone in the town of Dines knew that. Poor people, hungry people, miserable people, they all came to the door of the bishop's house. The bishop's sister looked at the man at the door that night, and she was afraid. "Look at him," she whispered to the bishop. "He is a big man, and a dangerous one. He carries a yellow card, so he was once a prisoner, a bad man." But the bishop did not listen. "Come in, my friend," he said to the man at the door. "Come in. You must eat dinner with us and sleep in a warm bed tonight." The man stared at the bishop. "My name is Jean Valjean," he said. "I was a prisoner in Toulon for 19 years. Here is my yellow card, see? People everywhere shut their doors in my face, but not you. Why not?" "Because, my friend, in the eyes of God you are my brother," said the bishop, smiling. "So come in and sit by our fire." The bishop turned to his sister. "Now, sister, our friend Jean Valjean needs a good dinner. Bring out the silver dinner plates. It's a special night tonight." "Not the silver dinner plates," whispered the bishop's sister. Her eyes went quickly to Jean Valjean, then back to the bishop's face. "Yes, the silver plates," said the bishop, "and the silver candlesticks, too. The church has these beautiful things, but they are for our visitors, and our visitor tonight must have only the best." And so Jean Valjean sat down with the bishop and his sister and ate from silver plates. He ate hungrily. It was his first good meal for weeks. "You're a good man," he said to the bishop, "perhaps the only good man in France." But Valjean could not take his eyes away from the silver plates. After the meal, the bishop's sister put the silver plates away, and Valjean's eyes watched. He saw the place, and he remembered it. In the night, in his warm bed in the bishop's house, he thought about the plates. They were big, heavy, so much silver in them. "I can sell those plates," he thought. "For just one of them, I can eat well for months." 19 years in prison is a long time, and 19 hard years change a man. By morning, Valjean was a long way from the bishop's house. But how do you carry big silver plates? How do you hide them? People in Dines began to whisper. Did you see him? That big man carrying 6 silver plates? Where did he get them from, eh? Those plates came from the church. A man like that doesn't have silver plates. No, and he carries a yellow card, did you see? So he was a prisoner once. He's a thief. He stole those plates. The police heard the whispers. They went after Jean Valjean, found him, and took him back to the bishop's house in the afternoon. But there they had a surprise. "My dear friend," the bishop said to Jean Valjean, "I'm so pleased to see you. You forgot the candlesticks. I gave you the silver plates and the candlesticks, you remember, but you forgot to take the candlesticks when you left." "But this man is a thief," said one of the policemen. "No, no, of course not," said the bishop, smiling. "I gave the silver to Monsieur Valjean." "You mean he can go? He is free?" said the policeman. "Of course," the bishop said. All this time Jean Valjean stared at the bishop and said not one word. The policemen went away, and the Bishop of Digne went into his house and came out again with the 2 silver candlesticks. They were tall and heavy and beautiful. The bishop put the candlesticks into Jean Valjean's hands. "Jean Valjean, my brother," he said, "you must leave your bad life behind you. This is God's silver, and I am giving it to you. With it you can begin a new, good life. I am buying your soul for God." Jean Valjean left the town of Digne with his silver plates and his silver candlesticks. Suddenly he was a rich man, but he did not understand why. "What's happening to me?" he thought. "Everything is changing. How can I hate people when this bishop is so good to me? What shall I do? How shall I live?" Prisoner Valjean did not understand anything. He sat down by the road with his head in his hands and cried. He cried for the first time in 19 years. How long did he sit there crying? What did he do next, and where did he go? Nobody knows. But when the sun came up on a new day, he was a changed man. Chapter 2. Fantine. Now we meet Fantine. She is young and beautiful and in love with a man in Paris, but she has no family and no money. For Fantine, this is the love of her life. For the man in Paris, it is just a summer of love. Men are not kind to women. They have their fun and then they walk away. The man in Paris goes home to his rich family and leaves poor Fantine with a child, a little girl called Cosette. Fantine must find work, but how? Fantine has a child, but no husband, and a woman without a husband is nothing, worse than nothing. People are not kind to a woman with a child, but no husband. They turn their faces away, they close their doors, they say, "There's no work here for a woman like you." Fantine loves her daughter dearly, but what can she do? So in 1818, in a village near Paris, she leaves her little daughter with Monsieur and Madame Thénardier. They ask for 7 francs a month. Fantine pays the money, holds her daughter in her arms for the last time, and leaves. She takes the road for her hometown of Montreux, and tears are running down her face. There is misery in her heart. Poor Fantine, poor Cosette. In Montreux, Fantine finds work in a factory. This is the factory of Monsieur Madeleine, an important man in the town and very rich. Everybody likes him because he is a good man. He is kind to his workers, he helps people, and his factory gives many jobs to the townspeople. But who is he, this Monsieur Madeleine? Where did he come from? He arrived in Montreux at the end of 1815, but nobody knows his family or anything about him. Fantine sent money every month to the Thénardier. They were not good people, and they used the money for their own daughters. Poor little Cosette was a hungry, dirty, unloved child. She worked all day. She cleaned the house, she carried water, and she washed the clothes. But Fantine knew nothing of this, and she worked long hours to make money for Cosette. The next year, the Thénardier asked for 12 francs a month. The year after that, they wanted 15 francs. Then Fantine lost her job at the factory because the women did not like her. She has a child in a village somewhere near Paris. Yes, and where's her husband? She doesn't have one. We don't want that kind of woman here. She must go. Fantine found work making shirts. It was hard work for little money. She was often ill with a small, dry cough. The Thénardiers wrote again. Your daughter needs a warm dress for winter. Send 10 francs at once. Fantine did not have 10 francs. She thought long and hard and went to the barber in the town. She took off her hat, and her golden hair fell down her back. That's beautiful hair, said the barber. What can you give me for it? 10 francs. Then cut it off. She sent the money to the Thénardier. My daughter's not cold now, she thought. She's wearing my hair. Soon another letter came from the Thénardier. Send 100 francs or Cosette must leave our house. 100 francs? How can a poor woman get that kind of money? There was only one way. One cold winter evening, outside a restaurant in the center of Montreux, a woman walked up and down. There was snow on the ground, but the woman wore an evening dress with flowers in her hair. Some young men came out of the restaurant, saw her, and began to call her bad names. They laughed and shouted, but the woman did not look at them. Then one young man took some snow and put it down the back of the woman's dress. The woman was Fantine. She gave a cry, turned, and hit the young man's face with her hands. People came to watch, laughing. A tall policeman arrived, took the woman by the arm and pulled her away. Come with me, he said. This was Inspector Javert. He was new to Montreux and he was a hard man. To him the law was the only important thing in life, and he hated criminals. The law in France at that time was not kind to women like Fantine. Javert took Fantine to the office of police. You hit a man in the street, and that's a crime, he told her. You're getting 6 months. 6 months in prison? Fantine cried. No, I'm not a bad woman, monsieur. Please, I must work. I need the money for my little daughter. Please, please, don't send me to prison. She fell to the floor, crying. Take her away, Javert said to a policeman. One moment, please, said a new voice. Everybody turned to look at the door, and there stood the great Monsieur Madeleine. He was an important man in Montreux. Inspector, he said, I was outside the restaurant too, and I can tell you the true story. The young man began the fight, and this poor woman, he looked at Fantine on the floor, must go free. She did nothing wrong. The woman is a criminal, said Javert angrily. She must go free, said Monsieur Madeleine. Ask the other people at the restaurant. We all saw the same thing. Fantine stood up slowly. She began to cough, a hard, dry noise. Monsieur Madeleine took her arm gently. My dear child, you are not well, he said. Javert's cold eyes stared at Monsieur Madeleine. Do I know you from somewhere? He said. Were you ever at Toulon? Monsieur Madeleine looked at him. His face did not change, but his eyes were suddenly very watchful. No, I don't know Toulon, he said. Monsieur Madeleine took Fantine to the little hospital in Montreux. She lay in bed and coughed and coughed. Monsieur Madeleine listened to her sad story, and the next day he sent money to the Thénardier. Now you must get better, he told Fantine. Cosette needs you. But Fantine did not get better. She was now very ill, and 5 days later the doctor spoke to Monsieur Madeleine. Does she have a child, this poor woman? He said. Yes, a small daughter. You must bring the child here, soon. Monsieur Madeleine went to sit by Fantine's bed. Monsieur Madeleine, you are so... kind to me. I want to see my daughter one last time. Please, can you bring Cosette to me? Please, monsieur. Monsieur Madeleine took her hand. Of course I can, he said gently, and then the door of the room suddenly opened behind him, and Fantine cried out, No, no! Monsieur Madeleine looked round quickly. Inspector Javert came into the room with 4 policemen. Jean Valjean, prisoner at Toulon, I am arresting you, Javert said. After you left the prison, you stole money from a child in Toulon. You are still a thief, and now you must go to prison for life. Fantine sat up in bed. No, she cried. Cosette. Monsieur Madeleine stood up slowly. Inspector, give me 3 days, he said. He was a big man, much bigger than Javert. 3 days to bring this poor woman's child to her before she dies. Then you can take me. Javert laughed loudly. 3 days. You're going to run away. Behind the 2 men, Fantine cried out, Monsieur Madeleine, please take care of Cosette. Oh, please. Javert turned to her. Be quiet, woman. There's no Monsieur Madeleine here. This man is a criminal called Jean Valjean, and he's going to prison. Fantine stared at Javert and tried to speak, but she could not. She fell back in the bed and lay still. She was dead. The people of Montreux talked about that day for a long time, the death of the woman Fantine, the arrest of Monsieur Madeleine. Javert put Monsieur Madeleine in a locked room in the police office, but in the night he broke down the door and escaped. Where did he go? Did he go to his house in the town? His old servant said no. She saw nobody and heard nothing, she said. She loved Monsieur Madeleine very much. So where did Monsieur Madeleine go? Nobody in Montreux saw him again. One thing was certain. In Monsieur Madeleine's house there were 2 beautiful old silver candlesticks. The next day they were gone.